Hey, my name is Yeonsuk. I'm currently living in Bowling Green, Ohio. I'm pursuing my master's degree in music composition here, so hopefully I won't be here for too long. There's a lot of things that I think very is interrelated. Partly because composition itself is also kind of like laying down things in a way that kind of makes sense, and you're trying to guide people. And for this piece in particular, this was like, just my first attempt at embracing things that I've liked and not having to be completely original and borrowing materials from different places, different things, and it's places where people come together. And I think I do take a lot of inspiration from that aspect of it, especially in particular with this piece. I have taken inspiration from other aspects, whether that be like just like the scenery or the intricacy of laying down things, maybe some frustrations with how things are have been built. Yeah, so it's just very, very different things, and I think it's a broad enough of a topic where I don't feel quite limited exploring, but I also am very passionate about this thing. So um, I enjoy learning about urban planning. And reading about it and stuff. So yeah, it's been a good marriage of things that I like. That's the hard part. I read about it, and maybe a lot of time for me it is like it's just like an idea. Like, it's not necessarily exactly about urban planning, but maybe it is an idea of like having a space, and how there's a concept in urban planning called like the third space that I've been reading quite a bit about. And you know, it is one of those things that are just like, this is a nice thing to have, and this is a very crucial thing that would be nice if we had more of. And it's those kind of like ideas that are like that I can maybe research into it and be like, hey, maybe how can I sonify these things? Sometimes they are way I structure my my two different elements together, and how things come together. But a lot of it is very just kind of abstract research of like, kind of want to do this. I kind of really like this idea. What are the commonalities in those things? How are these things kind of related in a way where it's not just like a one-to-one thing? Because I think that's kind of cheesy for me. If like this is the ocean and they have like these like wavy textures, I'm like, that's a little bit too like hands-on on like it's like you're kind of telling me too much about the thing. So I just kind of do like the sense of like removedness from the original thing. So you kind of have to think about it a little bit in order for you to be like, I could kind of see that, like, but I also want the music to stand on its own and be really like, you know, good as itself without really thinking about it. And when you learn about what this piece is about, I want that to kind of add to the experience, not necessarily tell you how to experience the music. Maybe it's just a word, maybe it's a silly saying in the title, maybe it's a motif they might recognize, or a harmonic language they might recognize. But when they listen to it, they're gonna have their own opinion, and that's great on its own. But maybe when I say something about this thing, maybe they can like kind of think about that thing, without necessarily the music being like, look at the mountain, now look at the ocean, now look at the river. Like, just being very more thoughtful in its approach, I think, than just painting a landscape. The original story is that one of my violin teacher back in San Antonio, his name is Matthew Zerwig. He has an ensemble called Camarada San Antonio.
Hmm.
And they I was back home for the summer in San Antonio, and I just was like, "Ah, I should go to his concert. And they played Lo and Behold, the Ravels string piano trio. And I was like, this piece is cool. I really like it. And I haven't got to hear it live yet. I'm like, there's a lots of cool things about it. So I just was like, okay, I want to write this. That is a summer that I got to backpack across Europe. I I finished my undergraduate and then I was like, okay, I'm gonna save up some money so I can do some fun things and go see some stuff. So this was like, all right, I put on my backpack. I got into like two festivals in Europe, so I was writing pieces. So I was like, all right, it's gonna be 6 weeks. I literally just had a red backpack, just size of a plane carry-on or personal item, and I had that on, and I just flew to Amsterdam, and it was a lot of fun. There were some fun experiences there that was only possible in Amsterdam, and I got to actually go around and, you know, ride around bikes and really kind of get a feel for it. So I was there for a little bit, and then I took a train to Paris, and I was there for a little bit, and I got to see some different like um boulevards and just old architecture. And I went to Italy, Switzerland, Spain. I stayed in a lot of hostels. I've met some people that I just, when you're by yourself and traveling, you just kind of hang out with random people. You get a drink with some random people and they're all over the place, like, and they've done some wild, crazy stuff. And yeah, it's interesting hearing people's experiences and just what they thought about it. And finally, when I got to Vienna, this is where the festival, I was there for 2 weeks, and this is the festival that I got to write for. And title for me is one of the most difficult thing for me
Hmm.
to come up with. And I was talking to my friend, and I was kind of like showing her, my piece and progress and getting some feedback. And she's like, this kind of reminds me of water skiers and things, how things like glide on top of it and just way things kind of bounce around. And so I was like, that's great. And then I gave a little nod to Ravel, as water skiers are unraveling, they're just kind of, so it was a little fun little pun. So yeah, but then I wrote it. I had a performance in Vienna for it for the festival. It was created in the midst of a lot of travels and a lot of reflection on just how things are, and my like growth process as a person. Definitely recommend just working a few years and just going on a travel. It is pretty life changing for me and very much kind of reflects that kind of wild experiences that I've had and I've done. So yeah, that's kind of the genesis of the piece. Depends on what the piece is, depends how far away from deadline I have, depends what I've been listening to. Currently, I'm doing another festival, and there's a piece due today, and I got started on it today, which I will get a chance to revise it. So I'm like, okay, this is a rough draft. I need to get a finished rough draft out. So this time I'm like, I have a particular sound that I can make with my tongue clicks, and I really
Hmm.
wanted to just kind of explore that sound and see what kind of like shapes I can make with my sounds. And I'm like, all right, I'm just gonna do it. And for this one, I'm like, I'm gonna have such a trouble trying to figure out writing everything that I want to in notation software. So I'm like, I'm gonna write it by hand. So like I started it writing by hand.
Okay, yeah.
Um, and so I'm working on that. Sometimes it's like I've been listening to a song and I'm like, that's cool. And I go look into it and I've like tried to find the score for it and I'm like, oh, that's a cool progression or cool harmony world. And I'm like, maybe I could do something with that. Or sometimes it's just like a concept. It's like, okay, somebody asked me to write a piece for saxophone, harp, and percussion. all right, what else is there? What's there? What can I do? So yeah, that's like I research it and I'm like, okay, this is kind of like where I want to start. And then I usually start just like straight onto notation software. Sometime I'm writing, beats and I'm like on Ableton, just kind of like doing things. Sometimes I'm coding little patches in Max MSP. Or sometimes I'm just making stuff on Ableton. It's kind of wild. Like it depends. Like, I just do a lot and nothing has hit that's like a solid process for me. But I tend to have good results if I research a lot and if I listen to a lot of music and then when I actually get to write it, I just I don't think about it. I just kind of like do as Heart says. I mean, think about I get ideas when I write about okay, it'd be cool if this came back, but if I just change something about it, or ooh,
Mm.
I can change one of these chords, or I can change a texture here, or I can bring back this effect, or it's now like this effect, but with this instrument and this sound. So that's kind of my process, and then the closer the time ticks, the faster I write toward the deadline. So I just kind of let it do its thing. Sometimes piece has a mind of its own, a life of its own, I would say, that I'm like, sometimes I want a piece to be a certain thing, but then the piece is like, I want to be this. I'm like, okay, we'll go that way. And you just kind of go and finish it. And my philosophy is that if I write a bad piece, it shall just be forgotten. And if I do write a good piece, it shall be remembered. And
Mm.
no one's gonna remember all the bad pieces I've written in like 200 years. Like, you know what I mean? Like, people only think about like the best. So I'm like, I try to like put my best effort, but I also try to not like overthink. I'm like, oh, is this gonna be bad? Is this gonna be good? I just kind of try to write it. And once you're done with that, you learn and hopefully you write a better piece next time if you don't like it. So like, we live, we learn. I feel like composition is one of those things that are just like kind of hard to be mastered at just because like you're changing constantly, you're growing as a person, you're a different person today than yesterday. So the piece that you write today will be different than yesterday. And it's just a growing process. It reflects me as a person. And if it's kind of bad and people don't understand it, that's okay. Maybe in a couple of years, maybe it'll be good. And man, maybe people won't still understand it. But I'll think it's better. I always tell myself I'm writing music because I want to write music. When people don't like it, it does make me a little sad because I am not above feeling sad when people don't like my child. But I do create because I feel like I have this sense that I need to make something and that I need to create art of some sort. I'm still trying to find what that thing exactly is, and I think I chisel away at it every time I write something new. Every time I create something new, I learn a little bit more about things that I want to talk about, things that I want to write about, the sounds that I want to explore. It could be very abstract, it could be very um concrete, but I learn things about myself and I'm like, I know no one really cares, but I need to get this out. And if you happen to like it, if you'll come along with my journey, and if you want to follow me as a person and be friends and just kind of see what are things that I'm doing, that's really cool. But also, like, if you don't like it, that's okay. You'll get it one day. Like, it'll make sense to you. So, or not, but that's kind of where I'm at. But it is kind of hard when you don't get recognized or listen to or feel like no, you're writing things into the void. But I've quit many times in the process of being a composer. But it calls me back and I can't not do it. Like it's like a bad relationship. You're like, I'm done. This is the last one, and then you're like, and then you meet again and you're like fine and you make it up and it's just on that cycle, you know. My biggest inspiration musically is my friends who play music. I know that's corny, but like they are the reason why I still kind of get to write music because they're willing to play it and they're willing to listen to it. And I show up to a lot of their things and I hear a lot and I'm like, oh, that's kind of a cool thing that you can do and you can play on your instrument. And I talk to them and they're like willing to put in the time to like explore um sounds with me and come on a journey together. And I feel like that is my that has been my biggest motivation to keep going forward and keep exploring new music. Aesthetically, like stuff that I like stuff like the Impressionist. I also really like the new like I don't want to say new tonal movement, but it's just like people like, you know, Caroline Shaw, Darian Thomas,
Mm.
um, just kind of people exploring new electronic music as well as like how things come together. I really like George Ligeti's music, Unsuk Chin. Um, I also like people like Moonchild. I like it's like a new jazz band. Abel Selakoas. He's a South African cellist. Really, really great like mix of like his own influences coming together. There is a harpist named Randy Younger. There is a harpist named Charles Overton, which I got to meet. I went to harp conference like last week, actually earlier this week, and I got to meet those people, and they're doing some really interesting work in jazz harp. I like Twice. It's like a K-pop group, and I listen to a lot of it. Do you know Silk Sonic? It's like a
Yes,
I
yeah.
love Silk Sonic. Maeve Gilchrist. There's an album called Harp Weaver that I really like that has a lot of like folk tunes in it. Speaking of folk tune, I also really like Bartok and
Mm.
stuff like that. You know, MF Doom has a really great use of samples and like one of his samples uses Come Out by Steve Reich. So I feel like it's a really interesting mix of worlds that people don't really like think about. I also like very like funny approaches to music. Like I feel like Pink Guy and people along those lines have a very interesting takes on the world, and I think they're interesting. A little bit of absurdist. So I do find the humor in things that are like quite absurd as well. So my taste kind of goes all over the place. I promise I listen to more classical composers. They're just not on my Spotify. And this piece is
Yeah.
kind of very much a signifier of that moment because I was like, I don't really care anymore. I don't need to impress anyone. I
Yeah.
just kind of want to write whatever I want to. And this was like that first step when I started doing that. I've been kind of more bold about the musics that I've written. I'm much more willing to stay in a tradition out of tradition. My biggest takeaway is if you do enough work to research and to really be thoughtful, you can convince almost anyone about what you're doing. Because I'm still in academia and I feel like or this like world of classical music is like as long as you kind of did your homework and you kind of understand what you're writing, and like where it kind of sits and what kind of pieces in similar aesthetics that you're surrounded by, they're like, okay, you're smart. We can accept this. Like, you know what I mean? It's like there are some little stigma around writing something simple and stuff, but also there's like a history behind that. So as long as you understand it and you're trying to do something new in your own way where you've researched enough music where you're not trying to do something new that's already been done, but you can do something old, but in a new way. And if you're doing something in a similar way, you kind of acknowledge that on your writing and be like, okay, I know this has been done, but here is a little bit twist on my take on this particular idea. I've gotten better at acknowledging that and being less afraid that I'm gonna be writing something that's totally unoriginal or not interesting. But I'm like, if I do enough reading, if I do enough listening, and if I know my way around the context, I can kind of write whatever I want. Currently, tomorrow, I'm driving over to Kalamazoo to go attend the Splice Institute and Festival, and I am just wrapped up a piece for flute and live electronics, and working on another percussion piece other than this one, and I'm working on a harp solo, and gonna be recording a chamber harp concerto next September, this coming September. I've been commissioned to write a saxophone, harp, and percussion piece that I haven't started on yet, so that will be on its way. So yeah, no, I'm just doing a lot of writing, applying for PhD programs, trying to figure out some grant to fly over to Thailand, like for the winter. There is a International Composer Institute of Thailand that is like a week, 2 week long festival where you just write a piece and you get to do stuff. It's fun. You can follow me at Yeonsuk _and_ composition. I have a little band called Squab Dad. That's SQUAB space DAD. You can find me on Spotify or whatever streaming service you use, /YouTube/SoundCloud. So go check it out. It's not quite what you'd expect, but we've done some game covers, we've done some funny songs, we've done some different genre bendings. So it's my two producer duo. So, you know, if you're interested, go listen to that. Yeah, and shout out to all the teachers who've really helped me get this far. And I'm glad I get to have my piece performed again in San Antonio to share it with people.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this interview and want to see more like it, check out the 30 by 30 by 30 playlist on our channel. For more information about the 30 by 30 by 30 project, check out the website linked to the right.